So my career with the Massachusetts State Police started June 7th, 1993. I remember the day vividly. That was the day I reported to the new Braintree Academy to start the 71st Recruit Training Troop. We were the second recruit training troop to be held at New Braintree, and all subsequent ones have been obviously held there since. I stayed in the academy all the way through it, graduated October 14th, 1993, another day I'll never forget. And from there, I was assigned to Troop D. Specifically, I was assigned to D7, which is the State Police Bourne Barracks. And that's where I did my break-in. That's where I learned a lot of the kind of on-the-job training that follows the academy. And then shortly after break-in, I transferred over to D2, or the SP South Yarmouth Barracks on Cape. At the time, I lived on the Cape, so very handy for me. And I got to patrol in my home area, which was another unique aspect of that. I worked approximately 5 years on the road in uniform patrol. At the time, the State Police detective unit that was known as CPAC, the Cape and Island CPAC, was upstairs at the barracks. They were on the second floor, and they kind of paid attention to who was working out of the barracks and who was trying to make a name for themselves, who was hustling. About 5 years into it, the unit commander came to me and said, "Listen, kid, would you be interested in coming upstairs and being a detective?" And I said, "Sure." And so an opening came up shortly thereafter. I applied for it, interviewed for it, and was able to get into the what was then known as CPAC, Crime Prevention and Control Unit, now known as the State Police Detective Units. And then I was assigned over to the CPAC. Had two parts to it. They had a drug side and a what we would call the body side. So one side that did narcotics enforcement, and then another side that did death investigations, homicide investigations, major crimes that came under the jurisdiction of the Cape and Islands DA. And so that's where I learned to be a detective. And I was very fortunate. I spent about 17 years in that unit, which was an amazing run. I promoted up, I took the exam, promoted up to the rank of sergeant. Happened to be a sergeant's opening, so I was able to stay. Took the exam for lieutenant. There happened to be a lieutenant's opening at the same time that I got made. So I got to stay. And then ultimately I took the captain's exam, and that was around 2012 now in my career, and became the unit commander. Moved from lieutenant, being the XO for the unit, to being the unit commander. And then around 2015, I was offered a position up in Maynard, to be the director of the Commonwealth Fusion Center and to run CIS, the Division Criminal Information Section within the Division of Investigative Services. I accepted that. I was honored to have been offered that. Reported to Maynard and threw myself into that job. I did that for a while. And then Colonel Gilpin was appointed. She replaced Colonel McEwen. And Colonel Gilpin reached out to me and offered me a position working over in DIS as lieutenant colonel. So with that, a new position, new promotion. I did that for about 2 years. I was lieutenant colonel. And then there was an opening for deputy superintendent. And so I was offered that position. I did that for about a year until Colonel Gilpin's retirement in 2019. So November 17th, 2019, I was appointed by then Governor Baker as the colonel of the Massachusetts State Police. And I remained in that position for a little over 3 years, and retiring in February of 2023. My very first memory, and I don't know why, but it's a vivid one. I was probably 11, 12 years old, and we had just moved to Massachusetts. My father was in the Air Force, so we were actually previously assigned to Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska. We'd moved down here to Massachusetts at Hanscom Air Force Base. And we were all together in the family station wagon. I was in the back seat, my dad was driving, and we were stuck on Route 128. If anybody's ever driven 128, they know you're always stuck on 128. So we were sitting in traffic, and it was just kind of slow-moving traffic, thousands of vehicles going in either direction, all kinds of things happening, just thousands of people, thousands of cars. And I remember sitting in the back seat and seeing a trooper kind of going by us. And I don't remember anything unique about the color of the cruiser. It didn't attract me. The uniform, I couldn't even describe who the trooper was, what he looked like. But I just remember the idea that like one person is in charge of all of this. I mean, and everything that happens, and all these people, and any crisis or catastrophe, accident, it's all on that one person. And I remember that, and just thinking, like being in awe of that almost, just like that is so impressive that that one person has that much responsibility and does it all by themselves, which was just unbelievable to me as a kid, you know. And it was almost like he was a superhero, you know. And I remember that. I remember that being my first impression of the Massachusetts State Police. And then I remember not thinking again about the Massachusetts State Police for another 20 years. I really just, you know, it wasn't anything that I looked at and I was impressed, but it wasn't anything that I thought, you know, wow, that's something I aspire to be, or that's something, it was something that impressed me and I respected. But at the time in my life, I had other dreams, and being a Massachusetts State Trooper wasn't one of them, which, you know, so many of the people that I've worked with, that's been their life's dream, to be a Massachusetts State Trooper. And it never was for me when I was young. So I graduated from the best RTT there ever was, which was the 71st RTT. Now every trooper will tell you their RTT is the best, and so I want to throw myself into that pool. So we graduated October 14th in 1993. We were all sworn in by then Governor Weld on a crisp fall day up at New Braintree. We were the second class to go through the new academy at that time in New Braintree, with the 70th being the kind of the first class that really set that academy up. Yeah, so with respect to my education, I went to the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. I was an environmental science major with a concentration in water pollution biology. And so I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my career, and it didn't have anything to do with Massachusetts State Police. It had everything to do with being an oceanographer. I was going to be the next Jacques Cousteau, I guess. I graduated in 1985 from the University of Massachusetts. At that time, there weren't a lot of job opportunities. There were a lot of federal grant cuts, federal hiring freeze at the time. So I was had this brand new shiny degree, didn't have anything to do with it. But fortunately, while I was at the University of Massachusetts, I had done an internship the summer from my junior year into my senior year. And that internship was at the town of Barnstable Department of Natural Resources on Cape Cod. And I was doing water pollution survey along the coastline to ensure that all the shellfish beds, you know, the contamination levels hadn't risen to a level where they needed to be closed. To get those water samples, to conduct those surveys, I had to hitch a ride. And the person I hitched a ride with most often were the game wardens, the local game wardens. And so through that summer internship, I got to know all the local game wardens. So when I graduated and had my new shiny degree and nothing to do with it, I looked back to Barnstable and I said, hey, do you have any summer work? Do you have anything? At least I can somewhat be in my field. They said, yeah, come on down, we have a summer position. So I went down there for that summer of 1985. As the summer went along, it turned out an opening within that department came along for a game warden. And they asked me, hey, you seem to be working out, we like you, would you be interested in being a game warden? And I said, whoa, you know, I understand this much about game wardens, you know, that they carry a gun, they have arrest powers, a badge, all of that. I've never touched a gun, I don't know anything about guns, I don't know if, you know, I could make an arrest or if I could do any of that. And they said, perfect, you're a clean slate, that's exactly what we like. We're gonna send you to the police academy and we'll teach you how to do everything. We're looking for somebody with a strong environmental background, and we like kind of your temperament, and we think you'd be well suited for this job. So not having a lot of options, and at this point I was coming to the realization that, you know, maybe living in a lab doing water samples all day wasn't my cup of tea. I enjoyed the idea of kind of being out on a boat or in a four-wheel vehicle, checking hunter, fishermen. That kind of was starting to appeal to me. And so I said, sure. And so in October of '85, I reported to the Barnstable Municipal Police Academy and did that. And that was a great experience. As promised, they taught me, you know, all the basics of policing. And then importantly, that was a class of probably 30 to 40 local police officers from the Cape area. And I got to meet and make a lot of friends during that. So a lot of people that were within law enforcement, I made lifelong friendships with, some that I still maintain to this day. some 35 years later. And there was one constant that always came up in my conversations or the times that I spent with those local police officers was that they were always talking about the next Massachusetts State Police exam. And they were always talking about their exam scores and where they were with the process, and always trying to, many of them, not all of them, but many of them were trying to get onto the Massachusetts State Police. And again, it didn't catch my attention. I just didn't, again, it wasn't a pull to the Massachusetts State Police, but I did recognize that a lot of people, that this was a very desirable position and agency to be a member of, and people were striving to get to that and investing a great deal of time and effort to becoming troopers. So I kind of just monitored this, or I was just aware of this. I ended up spending about 8 years as a game warden. And so I saw a lot of officers that were local officers that went on to the state police. And I saw a lot of officers that tried to get on the state police and were unable to. So finally, enough of the local cops were, kind of peer pressuring me into, hey, you got to take this exam, Chris. You got to take this exam. You got nothing to lose. Just take the exam. And I was starting to get a little itchy where I was, and it's a small department, not a lot of room for growth, advancement. So I said, just on a lark, what does it hurt? I'll take the state police exam. So I took the state police exam. I did well enough. I think I had like a 97 or 98. It was extremely competitive at the time. You needed to score, above a 95 to even be considered. And the state police sent me a nice little postcard at the time. I still remember it was like orange, I think, back in the day, kind of a reddish orange. And I received it in the mail. I looked and I saw my score, 97, 98, whatever it was. And I said, oh, that's good, I guess. And I put it up on the fridge with a magnet, and I didn't think anything of it, and I went back to work as a game warden. And I bumped into a local cop. I had no intention of replying to the card or anything like that, and I bumped into a local cop. And he said, hey, didn't you take the state police exam? How did you do? And I said, I got a 97. He's like, oh my God, you're going to the Massachusetts State Police? That's fantastic. And I said, no, I really hadn't thought of it. And he's like, you got to send that card in. The deadline's approaching. And he reached out to a couple other local officers that we mutual friends, and they all kind of called me up and said, hey, you at least have to put the card in and give this a shot. You'll never regret it. And so I said, you know what? I'm up for the adventure. I'm up for the challenge. I understand it's a very rigorous process. I'll give it a shot. And then once I made that, flip that switch, that was it. For me, all I ever wanted it to be, from that moment on, was like, I'm going to be a Massachusetts State Trooper. And I sent the card in, went through the process, the background, the interviews, the physicals, and all of that, and then ended up reporting to the academy. And the rest is history.